Herkese merhaba, hoş geldin. Welcome everyone to Bölüm 2 of Good You Can Do. I've decided I'm gonna mix up the languages that I use little bits of in the opening of the show because I just love languages. It's one of my little hobbies is learning about linguistics and different languages. So last episode was Te Reo Māori, and I should have used way more than just kia ora, and I will endeavour to do so next time. And that just before was Türkçe, Turkish. So hadi gidelim, let's go, let's get into it. Something I want to do with this podcast from time to time is have book reviews, film reviews, TV show reviews, if that's a thing that becomes relevant. And I just recently watched this movie, super late on the bandwagon, and I don't want to do an in-depth review on this one. I am restarting, I should say, a blog, and I'm going to do some more thoughts on it on there, so I will definitely link that when that's up. But I just wanted to have a little bit of a chat about it since I just saw it. So the film I'm talking about is The Game Changers, and the reason why I'm so late on the bandwagon is that I really didn't have any interest in this film. I'm not trying to be a pro athlete, I'm trying to be healthy, but I'm not worried about if I'm in the optimum health and what exact levels of micronutrients I'm getting and all those kind of things. So while health played a part in me wanting to eat less animal products, it didn't play any part in me wanting to become vegan. My thought process was like, can I be healthy as a vegan? And the answer to that was clearly yes, so my answer was okay then, let's be vegan. So this film didn't really interest me, and on top of that, I read some reviews of it early on that worried me that the film would be presenting some, if not pseudo-scientific ideas, kind of misleading ideas. And while I love the idea of people seeing that a vegan lifestyle doesn't prevent you from being fit and healthy or even achieving in sport at a really, really high elite level if you want, I don't love the idea of people being able to say that vegans are making untrue health claims and then, using that to undermine that very point that a vegan diet isn't going to hold you back. But anyhow, over my summer break this year, I had a lot of time and not a lot to do, so I thought, let's watch it. It's on Netflix, and to my surprise, I actually enjoyed watching it. And yeah, obviously they were picking out studies and examples that would back up their view, but that is something I think you have to be very wary of with all documentaries, and you have to kind of, watch the documentary and then look into things a little bit more because you know that a biased viewpoint is being presented. But there was nothing in this that really outraged me and made me think, oh, this is not great for the vegan movement actually. My favorite segment by far was the one with the anti-poaching guys. What they do is amazing, and it was so great to hear the true meaning of veganism, animal rights being touched upon there. And I really often find that there are groups doing amazing things for animals that we sort of already accept that we shouldn't kill or exploit, like rhinos. But even stray cat adoption places here in Aotearoa, they do this wonderful thing, but then often they also perpetuate the abuse of other species. And I don't mean by buying cat food, but by doing things like selling non-vegan baking to people, which is totally unnecessary, whereas obviously feeding the cats is not. And that's the kind of thing where it would be pretty easy to just do vegan baking and not make a big song and dance about it, not be like, this is vegan baking, guys, but just have no one know and be like, here, buy this cupcake. So side note, I also hate when just average people do this. So last year at my work, we had a fundraiser to raise money for groups in Australia that were working to rescue and rehabilitate animals affected by the bushfires, which sounds great, but they got people to bring in baking to sell, and obviously the majority of the people wouldn't be doing vegan baking, which that kind of thing I just find so frustrating. And so I loved seeing Damien, the guy that was running this anti-poaching coalition, talk about how for him he recognized the hypocrisy in a sense between him doing so much to help these animals while also eating a cow. And I think what I loved about that was the fact that so often people who are involved in that kind of work, or they're just an average person who doesn't want these animals to go extinct, obviously, they kind of, they will really care about animals that are endangered, and it's the degree to which they care is based upon how many animals of a certain species exist. as opposed to, even if millions and millions of them exist, seeing each of those cows or pigs as an individual. That doesn't happen. And it's this kind of species view where, like, it's okay to abuse them and oppress them on a mass scale if we are actually increasing the numbers of them, or if there's no risk of them going extinct. And actually, we shouldn't stop doing that because the numbers of them would decrease dramatically. But then, if an animal is endangered, we have to pour a massive amount of resources into trying to prevent it from becoming extinct and prevent them from becoming extinct. And, that's great. I don't want animals to become extinct either, but I wish people would have more of an individual view for sure. But anyway, like I said, I will put some more thoughts up on my blog at some stage, and I would love to hear your thoughts on this movie. If you've seen it, did it have a positive impact on you or someone you know? Because I have heard so many stories of people who will say, I've watched all these animal rights focused things with my partner or my brother or whoever, and it didn't really have much of an impact on them. But then when they saw Game Changers, they were like, oh, okay. And their mind was opened quite a bit, which I think is a great thing, obviously. And something I always think about is, for me, I feel like you need to think that you can live a happy and healthy life eating vegan food and fully understand that. And sometimes for some people it takes eating it for a while. I think you need to fully understand that before oftentimes the animal rights messages can really sink in. Like, obviously for some people, they see a documentary like Dominion and they decide to go vegan on the spot, and that's amazing. But I think for most people, and this was certainly the case with me, you really need to understand internally that, your life is going to be okay if you are to stop having all of these products. I know for me, the full-on like abolitionist message did not become something that I adopted until I had been living without using these products for a certain period of time, and I can't recall exactly how long that was, but it just became clearer to me than it had been previously that these things were so unnecessary. And if they're unnecessary, then there's no excuse for doing it. Whereas previously I was like, okay, I'm not happy with how these products are being produced, and that's why I'm going to boycott them. But perhaps in the future, there might be a way of doing it that would be okay. There might be a truly suffering-free way of killing animals, and we might be able to have only farms where animals were living in conditions where they really genuinely did have a really good life. And obviously that would mean we'd all have to eat a lot less meat and in order to be able to keep animals in those conditions. But I was kind of like, theoretically that might be okay, but that's just not a thing that exists right now, so hence I'm not going to buy these products. But then after I had been not eating them for a certain period of time, I was like, okay, it's totally unnecessary to have these products at all. So why would we bother coming up with that system? Why would we bother implementing that when we could just have a plant-based food system? Because all of these things are so unnecessary. And obviously I was already of the opinion that it was unnecessary for entertainment and clothing and those kinds of things. So I think if somebody can see a film like Game Changers and for the first time start to realize, okay, I can really be as healthy as I want on a vegan diet. And sometimes telling people the fact, like the Nutrition and Dietetics Association says that a vegan diet is healthy for all stages of life. Sometimes, people be like, okay, but it doesn't fully get taken on board until they see something. So I think if they see Game Changers and realize, okay, I can be totally healthy, I can be performing in sports at an elite level, okay, now I can put that together with the animal rights information that I've seen in the past, or that I might see in the future, and become vegan now or in the future. So I think that's a great thing. So yeah, let me know if it's had an impact on yourself or anyone you know, or alternatively, if you think there's something really, really harmful about it that I'm overlooking, because there are a few things that I'm like not in love with that I will mention in this blog post I'm talking about. But the main thing I wanted to discuss today was that last weekend I went to my first cube. I'm saying cube because that's kind of the term that people recognize, that people know, that people talk about. But actually in Aotearoa, our groups don't have any affiliation with Anonymous for the Voiceless, and I would love it if I've been looking for so long for some kind of article on the internet that will give me a rundown of all the reasons why people have issues with them and think that they are an unethical organization, because I've kind of caught little tidbits of things here and there that make me think that that's probably the correct opinion, but I really haven't seen anything that gives me that full picture where I can confidently and surely say that that is what I think or not, but I'm just struggling to find that kind of content that would allow me to do that. Anyway, however, our organizations in Wellington, like Wellington Vegan Actions, which is the group that I did this cube in inverted commas, they are not affiliated with them, and so we call these events Make the Connection. And it's essentially the same thing. We stand around with screens, and the people holding the screens have the masks on, and other people talk to passers-by that stop and show an interest in the footage or ask questions. And essentially they are doing the same thing, but just independently, I guess. So for me, when I previously saw cubes, the mask thing always seemed really weird to me and kind of cringe and gimmicky, and I understood why they do it. It's because we don't want the attention to be on the person holding the screen. All the attention should be on what's happening on the screen, but the masks do kind of get attention initially. People see the mask and are like, what's going on there? And then the idea is that they will start watching the screen and focusing on that, and it's not about, the person holding the screen. And I noticed when I had my turn holding the screen, I was able to make eye contact with people through the holes in the masks, but I tried to not do that because I know for 100% sure that if I was walking past in my pre-vegan days and I wanted to watch what was on the screen, I was curious about that, but then the person made eye contact with me, that would be the moment when I would walk away and stop watching, because I would feel like, oh no, they're going to try and initiate a conversation with me, which would have terrified me, so I would have just wanted to kind of watch in my own way and then go away. So activism of this kind is something that I've been wanting to get involved with for as soon as I became vegan practically. And it's only just recently that my mental health has gotten to the point where I felt like I was actually able to go and do that. I just had enough essentially of putting my life on hold until this or until that. And I was like, I need to allow myself to live my life the way I want to live it now. I need to stop waiting for this or that thing to happen, for me to, be this weight, or for me to have this other issue sorted out. I was like, that is ridiculous. I need to live my life, and actually living my life in the way I want to is going to make it easier for me to achieve all the things that I want to achieve anyway. So I need to just do it. Because something I've struggled with over the past decade almost is, no, it's actually a decade now. Something I've really struggled with, especially in the last few years, is grief for the experiences and connections that I have not had as a result of my mental health holding me back from creating them. And so not only was I not going out and doing the things I wanted to do, but I was feeling a lot of guilt and shame and grief towards myself for not having done these things. And, there's nothing I can do about that. There's nothing I can do to bring my 20s back. They're gone. And it's a waste of time, essentially, for me to sit in those feelings. I have to just accept that that's been my life journey, and I have to just go forward and live the rest of my life in the best way that I can, and understand that some days I'm going to have days where I am down and I do feel like not doing anything, because that's just a thing that I am obviously susceptible to, so I have to have room for that a little bit. but also I have to try and push myself as much as I can when I can. So having the Animal Rights March in Wellington last year was very helpful to me, because it was something where I felt like if I am going to get involved in this in the next few months and going to Cubes and these kinds of other, protests, then if I haven't gone, I just thought, how am I going to tell people that I didn't go to this biggest event that it was being pushed for, everyone to attend, even if, you never attend any protests normally, this is the one to go to. If you go to one ever, one a year or something, this is the one for you to go to. I thought, I can't avoid this one. I have to make it here if nowhere else. So I had no one to go with, but I was like, just go. It doesn't matter. And luckily I did end up meeting a few people there, which was really cool. And I had an amazing time there. I was just absolutely buzzing, especially in the beginning of the walk. I was just feeling like this is what I'm supposed to be doing with my time. This feels fantastic. I am not thinking right now about my own issues. I'm just, I felt present. I felt in the moment, and that is something that I rarely do. So I just loved that whole experience so much. And I think one of the biggest benefits towards those kind of larger scale events is that it is very empowering. I've already spoken to quite a few people who went along to that march in kind of the same way that I did, where they weren't really involved in anything like that before, but they thought, this is the big event, I'm going to go to this. And it really empowered them to want to get more involved going forward. And, just being in a group that's a lot larger than what would be in a normal kind of event, it just makes you feel like you're more part of this movement, and that things are happening, and, so that was such an important beginning step for me. And I remember as we were walking along, and I was just having such a great time, and I was doing the call back, someone would call out a chant, and then we would all call back the next bit of the chant, and I was listening to a woman that was doing that, and I was thinking, would I be able to do that in the future? Would I be able to be that person? And I thought, yeah, I would, and I would love to do that. And I was thinking, yeah, I totally could do that, because, I used to do a lot of performance and public speaking and things like that. I can be quite a shy person when it comes to, naturally interacting with people as myself. But when I have a role to play, and when I know how to do that role, I'm very confident. So I love doing things like that, because it makes me feel like that confident person, as opposed to the more shy, awkward person that I am in my normal day-to-day life. So it's like, yeah, totally, that would be an amazing goal for me to have, to be at that level where I'm one of the leaders of something like this in the future. And then a little while later into the march, a guy came and punched this woman, or tried to. I don't think he actually got the hit in, because everyone obviously converged on him and stopped that, and it was not a good situation. Police basically hadn't decided to show up to patrol alongside us, as they would do with a lot of other marches. I don't know if, I know they were notified that it was happening. I don't know if they thought there were going to be a lot less people, or whatever the case was. I know also there were some of them in town, obviously working at the Verywell Christmas event, which is all well and good that they should be there. But it would have been nice if there could have been one or two cops at this march as well, out the front, to have had professionals who could have intervened in a situation like this, because this guy ended up falling onto the ground, and I'm not exactly sure what happened, but cracked his head in some type of way and had to go to hospital, of course. And he ended up trying to assault one of the paramedics that came to help him into the ambulance. And yeah, I really hope that he was okay after getting to hospital and having whatever kind of treatment he needed. I don't know what happened, but yeah, hopefully that all turned out okay for him. He did seem as though he was drunk when he approached this woman, and obviously I'm very anti going up and trying to assault people who are peacefully protesting. However, this is an issue that makes a lot of people very angry on both sides, and especially I think the people that are not vegan can feel very insulted and can feel like, you know, something's trying to be taken away from them and all these kinds of things. And that's not in any way to say that his behavior was okay, but obviously when you add that to being drunk in the middle of the day or whatever it might be, it's not a great recipe. So anyway, this happened, and I was like, gosh, I hope this guy's okay. There was those kinds of feelings. I was glad that, you know, no one on our side had got hurt, so there wasn't like a, you know, we didn't have people just hurt all around. Only one person ended up having to go to the hospital, and I was hoping that he was going to be okay. You know, and then I was also thinking like, oh, I just was thinking that I would like to be in that position in the future, and this is what could happen to me if I were to achieve that. Do I have to rethink this now? Is that still something I want? And, you know, I ultimately was like, I actually can't factor that in, because I won't do anything if I do that. I have to, you know, obviously people should always be safe. You should always try and make things as safe as possible. But you can never make something totally safe, right? And you have to just be like, okay, well, am I going to live my life based on trying to keep myself as safe as possible and not do any of the things I want to do, or am I going to do them? So I was like, I have to decide to do it. I can't let that be too much of a barrier. So the march continued, and a little further down the road, you know, I kind of felt over that whole situation, and was back into feeling more of the positive energy of the march. And then we listened to so many great speeches by so many amazing activists, so that was great. So yeah, as I say, attending this march was a really big stepping stone for me. It made me feel like, okay, I'm ready to start going to these Make the Connection events. So yeah, last weekend I went to the first one, and it was a very interesting experience and a very positive experience for me overall. Now, I was a bit less confident than I expected to be in the one conversation that I did end up having. So I kind of thought to myself, okay, the issue that I have, the thing that I find really difficult is approaching people, starting a conversation. Once I've done that, or they've done that, or someone else has done that, I kind of know what response to give to every sort of argument or critique or question that somebody could bring up. But yeah, it's a little bit different when it's in person, and you can't, like, you know, if you're responding to someone on Facebook or something, you get to like say the whole of what you're going to say before you press send, and you can you know, edit things before you press send. So often I'll be typing out a response to somebody, and I'll kind of get to the end and then be like, oh, actually I should have worded this bit a little bit differently, or I should add this piece of info in here, etc., etc., and then you press send, right? But in a real conversation, obviously you kind of have to think of things as you go, and that's I think makes it a lot harder for everyone. And then also with my dyspraxia, I found that was affecting me quite badly last weekend, you know, more so than usual. And I guess like with a lot of conditions, when you're nervous, it starts to kind of become more prominent. So I noticed that I was tripping over a lot of words more so than I usually would do. And, you know, and then when you do that, it's like such a vicious cycle, because you do that more than you normally would because you're nervous. And then once you've done that, you become more nervous because you're like, oh no, I'm sounding really stupid and I'm not sounding confident. And yeah, so it just kind of perpetuates itself. And something that I've really been working on for the past several months, and I feel like I'm in a pretty good place with now in terms of my mental health, is that when something like that happens and I don't do as well at something as I expected to or wanted to, I'm okay with it. And, you know, there's been times in the past where I would have been like, oh, I'm not amazing. I'm not this like great, you know, I'm not like earthling it on my first try. And so that means this isn't for me and I should just do something else and, give up on this. I'm like, no, that's fine. Of course, your first time is going to, like, suck. You grow into it. You have to practice. You have to develop your skills and you have to be, and I've always known that intellectually, of course, but I didn't want to go through the process, I was like, yeah, well, of course, yeah, people get better at things over time, duh. But I was like, I personally do not want to go through that process. I don't want people to see me not doing super well at things. I want to, put a good image out there and a successful sort of image out there. And now I'm like, no, I have to be okay with it. And you're going through that process and people understand that, because the people that are there and that are more experienced, they've gone through that too, right? So just be okay with it is something that I have really learned. And I was thinking when I got home as well, like, okay, and I do know that my issue is going to be approaching people. Sometimes I struggle to actually see the people around who are approachable, who are kind of looking like they're a candidate that should be approached. I sometimes struggle to sort of notice people. Like I'll see somebody else walking over to have a chat with them, and then I'll realize like, oh, that person was actually there already, and I could have gone over and chatted with them, but I didn't even realize they were there properly until just now. So that's something for me to work on. And just the approachable thing, I was thinking of like, okay, I need to have like prepared things in mind of what are like my opening lines to people going to be. So I was thinking like, okay, I can say like, have you seen this kind of footage before? It doesn't have to be a big thing where you walk up to them and you're like, hi, I'm Emma. Do you want to have a chat about animal agriculture and standard practices in New Zealand? Like, obviously, that's not how you do it. I can just kind of lean into them and be like, have you seen this kind of stuff before? Very casually. Or I can say like, do you have any questions about what you're seeing? Or just like, hi, like, how are you? What do you think about this? So those kind of things can be openers. So I started off holding the sign for a while. We had 3 screens and 1 sign that said make the connection. It had a picture of, I'm not sure if it was a cow or a pig now going by memory. I want to say a pig. A pig on one side and a dog on one side. So it's, the whole implication of like there's not a moral difference between these 2 animals. They both should have the right to their own life. So I was holding that sign and the other people around were holding the screens, and something I'm kicking myself for is that, in terms of like, you should have been more confident and you should have, you had a good idea, you had the right idea and you should have shared it with people. So Cuba Street is a pedestrian, well, at least sections of it are pedestrianised. And we were in the pedestrianised bit in the middle of the road. And so there were people kind of walking past on either side. And facing into the middle was one of the screens. Facing onto the other side, opposite to me, was one of the screens. Facing upwards in the middle was another screen. And then there was me facing towards the side with my sign. And I kind of thought to myself a couple of times, like, it'd probably be better if one of the people with the screens was here and I swapped with them, because most of the foot traffic is going by me, and like it's better for people to see the screen with all the dying, tortured animals than this sign, which is very nice and it's good, but it's not the same. And and if I had been facing with the person that was facing downwards into the middle, that would have been better, because that was kind of the opening to the street. And so that's kind of like, a banner almost of like, this is what we're doing. This is like the title. And then the screens are, the body of the article or whatever. And it just would have made a lot more sense and got more people to see the footage. But I was like, well, I've been put here, so I'll just stay here. That's what I'm meant to be doing. And then anyway, later on, when I was not holding the sign anymore and I was like standing around, I noticed one of the other guys noticing the same thing that I had noticed, except like an hour later, and be like, okay, can we please move? the sign and the screen, can we swap them around? And I was like, oh, I should have mentioned that, because obviously it's the right idea. Like, everyone agreed. No one was like, no, bad idea, bro. So yeah, just one of those silly little things where I'm like, why didn't you say that? So it was very interesting to witness other people's conversations. I couldn't hear much of them because we had music and they were a little bit away and all of those kinds of things. But, I did catch little snippets, which was good, because I definitely wanted to just kind of observe for my first time before getting into too many conversations. Just because while, like I said, I feel like I know the answers, so to speak, to most questions or objections that people would bring up, I kind of wanted to see how they do it so I could figure out how I would fit into that or not, or just how I would slot myself in. That's not to say that everyone has to do things in the same way. They very much do want people to bring their individuality to it, because everyone speaks about things in a slightly different way, and everyone has a different experience of, what worked for them, and different sort of approaches are going to connect with different people. So that's all great. But I just wanted to kind of see, like, what's the vibe here? How's it all done? What kind of things do they focus on? All of that stuff. So, it was really interesting watching people's conversations. One woman started crying at one point, talking about the egg industry, and a few other people, like, you could really see there was an interest there, and that they appreciated, in some cases, like, advice. There were people that usually were fairly open-minded to it. They just didn't maybe know exactly how to be vegan or more vegan than they are currently. And yeah, then there was also people like this woman who, like, didn't know a lot about this industry. So I can definitely see that it makes a really positive impact on people. And I just think it's such a positive form of activism. It's such a non-aggressive form of activism, because it's such an empathetic form of activism. There's no shaming or judging of people. It's all about presenting them with information. And it's like, it's up to you and how your mind and conscience operates as to what you're going to do with this information. Now, we're just showing it to you, and we're only talking to people who say something to us or show an interest. And like, if you look like you're showing an interest, and then someone approaches you and you're like, I don't want to chat, or you walk away, like, that's totally fine. That's your call, and it's just left to be your call. So I think that's a really good thing, because no one can say that, like, you're kind of really pushing something upon people. It's just like, we're here, and if you're interested, like, let's have a chat. Yeah, and it's very, people just talk about their own experiences and kind of how and why they went vegan, and just give advice if people want it, or just, like, answer people's questions. And, everyone is encouraged to remember, like, you weren't vegan your whole life, and you probably weren't, like, an evil person. You probably didn't love animal abuse. So, remember that in your conversation. And I think that's a really important thing. And, so I love it, because it's just a very positive and empathetic form of activism. It's very non-aggressive, and all of those good things. So another, I wouldn't even call it a conversation in the traditional sense that it's meant to be, but an interaction that I had after I was holding the signs that was a little odd to me, and that I think maybe got me off on a slightly bad foot, is that a person came up to me who, don't know their name. I know that their name is known to people, but I can't remember it. And I get him confused a lot with another person, but like one of Wellington's characters, shall we say. And I don't know, again, because I get him confused with another person that I've heard things about. I don't know what his housing situation is. There's definitely a level of instability there, from what I've been kind of told by different people that seem to know somehow. And yeah, I don't know if there's substance abuse issues. There's definitely mental health issues, but I don't know the details, and I don't want to, say something wrong or say something disrespectful, because that's not my intention at all. But essentially, there are certain characters, as we would call them, in Wellington that are widely known, and yeah, you see them walking around town a lot. And so this particular individual who, yeah, I know there are people that know his name, but I am not one of them currently. This guy came up to me, and he can be a little bit hard to understand at times, but he basically said to me, like, what's, going on here? Are these guys doing this again? And I was like, yeah. And I had a brief moment of like, how am I going to respond to this? Because I didn't want to like be rude and ignore him. I didn't want to, do any of that, but I also didn't want to get into a conversation, like in the sense that I would with anyone else, because like I said, I don't know what this person's housing situation is, and I believe there's like a level of homelessness there, and so you're not in a position to be like choosing your food potentially, and so, and then the other thing is I've heard, and I may be again confusing this with another person, and this isn't the case with this person, but I felt like I remembered hearing that this guy can become aggressive and violent towards people, and people have seen this in the past. So yeah, well, I didn't want to just ignore him, obviously. I also was like, I don't want to like say something that's going to provoke him to violence if that's a thing that other people have experienced, So I was like, okay, I'll just, answer whatever questions he asks in like the most polite and also kind of neutral way that I can. So I was like, oh, is this happening again? And I was like, yep. And he goes, oh, this isn't very good. And I said, oh, and I think it's good. Like, I'm here with them. And then he said something about like, why are they wearing the masks? And I said, oh, they're just wearing them so that people will focus on the screens and not on them, something like that. And he goes, oh, but we're not in like COVID lockdown anymore. We don't have to wear the mask. And I was like, I know, they're just choosing to wear them. And he was like, but we're not in lockdown. There's no community transfer of COVID. And I was like, I know, but like they're just choosing to wear them because it helps take the attention away from them instead of putting it on the screen. We want people to focus on the screen, something like that. And he was like, okay, and kind of looked at it for a bit, and left at that point. So okay, that was interesting. And then another guy I was talking to was saying that he had tried to be vegetarian before. It was me and another guy that were talking to him, and he said he'd tried to be vegetarian before, but he felt really weak when he wasn't eating meat. And that's why, we asked him, like, have you seen this kind of footage before? And he said, yep. I have, and like he thought it was really bad, and he didn't like it, and so he had tried to be vegetarian before, but he felt really weak. And so I said, like, what were you eating when you were trying to eat vegetarian? And he didn't really answer that, which is what I was trying to get to happen, because then you can go to suggesting like what they should be doing instead potentially. But he was just saying like, some people, their system like works with being vegetarian or vegan, and some people it doesn't. And I thought, I think pretty much everyone can do it. What were you eating? Were you just like taking out meat from the meals you were having, or what? And I can't remember exactly what he said, but he didn't answer it. But he also did kind of imply that he was just having vegetables essentially. And I was like, I said something like, you probably just weren't having enough calories because, sometimes, because meat has a lot of calories in it. And if we just remove meat from our meals, like we probably won't be eating enough calories. So you need to maybe eat a bit bigger meals. You need to make sure you replace the meat protein with like plant proteins, like da-da-da-da-da. And the guy that I was with said, like, hey, I'm a chef at this place sometimes, and we have like really cheap vegan meals every week. Like, come try it out, see how you feel after that. And, he was like, cool, like, I will. And yeah, we were both basically just like, I reckon give it another go. Like, I reckon if you do this, you'll be all good. Give another go, see how you go. And he was kind of like, yeah, like I will, like, thanks, da-da-da. So, I don't know, like, whoever knows to what degree people mean what they say versus what, degree they're just kind of trying to say something to get out of the conversation. But, like, I feel like it's probably a mixed bag. Like, probably some people do that and probably some people are genuine. You sometimes can't tell which is which. But yeah, like, I felt it was a fairly positive conversation for the small time that it had happened. The guy said that I did a good job, and I was kind of like, I feel like I could have done a lot better, because I just didn't feel very confident in the conversation. I think part of that was when you are doing it with somebody else, you don't know, like, when should I jump in versus when should I leave it to you to answer, versus like, am I speaking over you, or am I, taking too much of the time and attention away from you, or not, because it's like you don't want to do that, but then you also don't want to seem like you're leaving them to do everything and aren't doing anything yourself. So, there's all that kind of thing going on there. So yeah, as I say, this was a really positive experience for me. I highly recommend anyone who's been interested in getting involved in activism of some kind to do so. There's so many different things you can get involved in. There's so many different ways to get involved. I've met a few people in the last few months that come from smaller towns and they want to get involved in more things, but there's not really anything going on there. And like, the obvious thing to say to that is like, be the one who starts it. But, that takes like a higher level of confidence and involvement and often expense than it takes just to kind of join on to something like I've done. Like, it's not really fair for me, who's just tagged along, to be like, start your own, chapter of vegan actions in your city and like start all this stuff happening. But like, someone's going to do it at some point, presumably, and it could be them. And, if that's amazing, if that is, because, like, yeah, I don't think I would be the one to be starting it in Wellington for sure. So, yeah, but, there's stuff you can do that's online and all of that jazz. Like, there's so many different ways you can do things. And I think if I did want to start something in real life, where there wasn't anything happening, like, you would start online and try and get a group of you to start it. So it's not just you, like, I would post in the vegan groups and being like, hey, like, I've been thinking I want to get into activism, but there's not really anything happening here. Is anyone else feeling the same? Because there'll be people, because I keep finding them. And, let's try and set something up just ourselves. Something someone suggested to me we went out for dinner after this event, and something someone suggested in front of me, I should say, to one of the people who was from a smaller town, was that, like, sometimes also there'll be people in your area who, like, they don't want to or can't get involved in this for themselves, but they really support it, but they would be willing to donate money to the people that are going to do it to help out with their setup costs. So that's another avenue that they could look into. But yeah, I highly recommend getting involved with whatever you can, because I have found it to be such a positive and empowering experience. And there are so many different styles. There's something for, I think, just about everyone. No matter what your sort of style is, no matter what your ability is, etc. And I'm not saying that it's something everyone should do, because obviously there are all kinds of situations where a person isn't going to have like the time or energy to do so, and that's totally fine, especially if like your business is, running like a vegan food restaurant or something like that. Like, I get it, it's not for everyone, but if you can, and if it's something you're interested in, I highly recommend it, because it's just been such a good experience for me, and I can't wait to get more and more involved. And I know, because there was a case for me, that your mental health could be something that can hold you back as well. But actually getting into this stuff has been doing wonders for my mental health, and I wish I'd started doing it sooner, because I'm, forming connections with people and meeting people and interacting with people, even if we don't become like best friends on the first day, or ever potentially, just going out and meeting people and interacting with people is a really good thing for me. Getting out of the house, just walking to these events, is something that is good, like gets me outside for a while, gets me moving, all those kinds of things. And the motivate, like, obviously I can just go for a walk anytime, and that's something that I have been doing a little bit, but doing it to get to an activism event is a lot more motivating for me than like just doing it for myself, and that's not the greatest thing. I should be able to like find all the motivation in the world to do things for myself, but sometimes connecting something to like a cause that is bigger than yourself can give you that extra push of motivation, and that has definitely been the case for me. But yeah, I think it's done absolute wonders for my mental health, and I can't wait to continue doing it and see how things just get better and better, both in terms of the positive impact I can have on this movement, hopefully, but also like on myself. Something that's been discussed lately in some of the vegan Facebook groups that I'm in is this topic of activism. So a graphic was shared that generated a bit of controversy in many of these groups, and I'll put it up on the Instagram for the show, so you can have a look. That will be linked down below in the description. But yeah, this is something that was so interesting to me because I saw this graphic like early on in the day before kind of any of the controversy had really erupted, and I just saw it and was like, yep, I basically agree with this post. Yep, it was a post about trying to, as I read it, encourage people into activism, basically. And as I read it, I just saw it as that, and I was like, cool, yeah, I agree. Like, it would be great if more people would come to protests or these Make the Connection events or whatever it may be. But then later on I came back and I found that a lot of people felt that it had quite a shaming tone to it. So it was saying, like, if you are someone who doesn't go to these kinds of things, or if you are someone that has like a vegan food blog, where you kind of just talk about food and don't talk about like animal rights or whatever, that's not doing enough, and that's not, good enough, and that you need to be doing activism, or like you're a bad vegan or not a good enough vegan or something. Like, that's the way that a lot of other people read it. And this was so interesting to me because that wasn't the vibe that I got from it at all. And I'm not saying that these people's concerns weren't valid. Like, on kind of reading their thoughts and looking at it again, I was like, oh, okay, I can see how it could be taken that way, because there wasn't any information presented on like, and here's how to get involved in activism if that is a thing you want to do. And it did seem, I can see where they were coming from, basically, is all I'm trying to say. But it was just interesting to me because it just shows you how you can think that you've been very clear about what you think. You can think that you're portraying a certain message, but people can take it in a totally different way to what you intended. And like, on second read through, I was like, okay, actually, like, I can see a few places where this wasn't worded in the best way that it could have been, or something like a little caveat could have been added here to kind of make it more clear what it's saying and what it isn't saying, so that maybe this didn't happen. But yeah, it's just interesting to me how like people can have such different views of things, and that's something to kind of always bear in mind. And I don't think it's something that you can ever fully avoid. Like, sometimes there's always going to be people who take things in a way you didn't intend, or just disagree, even with what you did intend to say, and that's fine, but you should always kind of try and do the best job of making sure that you're not unintentionally including a message that is like shamey or judgy when that's not the intention. So that was very interesting to me to see. And something that I picked up on in a lot of the comments from people that did have an issue with it was they would say, like, reasons why they weren't involved in or planning to get involved in activism. And that's fine in and of itself. Like, it's fine to not be doing that and not planning to. And, people can have many very valid reasons for that, or people can just not want to, and like, that's fine. But some of the reasons that were cited were reasons that I didn't think was super valid or accurate. So something that a lot of the responses seemed to say was that people felt like, they do like talking to people about veganism and why they're vegan and all of that, but they like to try and be really empathetic and understanding towards people, and they don't like to be aggressive towards people, and they don't like shouting at people. There was a lot of like implication that activism equaled shouting at people, and like, there was no shouting at this Make the Connection event, and there's so many kinds of activism that don't involve shouting and that can be very empathetic, like I felt this one was. Like, this was all just about having those kinds of conversations that these people have in their real day-to-day life, just in a more artificial environment, that they've created, as opposed to just kind of waiting for someone else to bring up the topic in your daily life. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's amazing. I love when people, have those conversations during their day-to-day life and they get to impart some information to somebody, or just show them hey, I'm here living as a vegan and I'm happy and I'm healthy and I'm a nice person and I'm not, constantly angry at everybody, and I'm not constantly, judging you and all of these kinds of things. I think that's great. But yeah, this event was basically just doing the same thing, but not in that kind of real life way. And it was very empathetic and kind, and it wasn't about shaming people. It wasn't about, yelling at them or anything like that at all. So yeah, it was just very interesting to me that people seem to equate activism with shouting and with being aggressive, because there's so many different kinds of activism that people can do that are just so not that. And even a lot of the things that people might feel like are shouty, I don't necessarily think even are. For example, supermarket disruptions, that's not something that I think would ever be my vibe, something like the avenue I want to go down, but I think there's definitely a place for it. And most of the ones I've seen aren't shouted, that people are just standing there with signs. And also in most cases, the signs that people have aren't ones that are hating on or having aggressive messages towards the, non-vegan shoppers. They're ones that are just imparting information essentially. So I totally understand that that's not something that everyone would want to get involved with, because I don't think I even want to. I don't think it's aggressive or shouty necessarily, and same thing with going to protests. Sometimes it includes yelling, it includes saying a slogan or message loudly sometimes, but it's not necessarily hateful towards people or aggressive towards people. It's sometimes just saying something loudly, but it's not. I personally wouldn't want to get involved in any kind of protest where we were seeing an individual walking by and we were yelling at them you're an animal abuser, you're, disgusting human, just saying nasty stuff towards them. That's not something that I would want to be involved in. But I would loudly yell technically stuff that they might be walking past. I would be yelling this company is doing this, or this is what's happening in the industry. I don't think that's yelling at people, personally. But again, I get it, different kind of styles of things are going to appeal to different people, and I think that's good, actually. It's good to have different forms of activism going on as opposed to just one, because different people respond to different things, just like we as vegans or as vegan activists have different forms of activism that we want to do. People who aren't vegan have different forms that they'll be more or less responsive to, and that's normal and fine. So yeah, but it was just interesting to me that this kind of equivalence was being made, whereas I don't feel like that's the case. So what I'm saying is I think we who are involved in these things need to do a better job of showing people what they're really like, and making the environment seem welcoming, showing people how they can get involved in these things if they want to, and then also showing what the experience of doing so will be like and how it may be different to what they may think that it is. Show these things in a positive light as something that not only is going to have a positive impact, but is going to be something that is a positive experience for you as the person doing it, as opposed to something that is scary or is aggressive. So hopefully we can do that. I'm definitely going to try and share about when I have positive experiences. So I'm going to a protest next weekend for Wellington Cup Day. So this is an anti-horse racing protest, and it's actually going to be a silent protest. So there won't be any aggression there, and there won't be any yelling there. That could be a thing that people can do. I might not get this podcast. The podcast will be uploaded before then, but I may not have started like telling people that it exists before then, but silent protests are obviously a form of protest that is definitely not yelly by whatever definition you want to think of yelly as. So yeah, that is everything I think I had to say today. Let me know what you think. I would love to hear about any different forms of activism that you're involved with, whatever it might be, and how you found that experience for you. I'm just interested on one level, and then on the other level I'm like, what can I involve myself in? I'd love to hear like what you think has worked really well, maybe for you or on someone you know. I heard a really great story from Wellington Vegan Actions yesterday, not yesterday, why did I say that? A while ago, where someone was just shopping in the supermarket and they, they had a lot of like vegan alternative products in their cart, and the person that was scanning the items asked them like, oh, are you vegan? And they said, yes, I am. And the person said like, oh, cool, I just went vegan like a couple of months ago. I saw these people on Cuba Street like showing footage of like animals being killed and whatnot. And, I had never seen like this before, and I went home and like looked up, what was going on and tried to figure it out. And, after that I became vegan. And so, I think these things do have a positive impact that we don't even realize. Like there are people who don't stop to talk to you, but who see the footage and are like, huh, what's going on there? Is that real? Or are these people just like making stuff up for their agenda? And then, they look things up and they find out the truth. Hopefully they get to websites that have the truth and not like propaganda websites. But yeah, like they look things up in their own time and they come to that conclusion by themselves. And so it was just planting a seed. And I think that would have been the case for me if I had seen something like this before I went vegan, because I 100% know, unless someone had approached me really quickly, in which case I probably would have like talked to them a little bit, because I wouldn't have the confidence to like walk away and ignore them. I know, like, I kind of would have looked at things as I was walking past and been like, what's going on there? Like, that doesn't look very good. Like, and I'm curious about what's happening there. But I wouldn't have wanted to stay and chat. But then I might have later on been, like, typing into Google, like, well, what's going on there? What's, like, the deal with the egg industry in Aotearoa? Or what's the deal with dairy, etc. So yeah, I'd love to hear about your experiences with activism, and all the social media links are down below that you can use to get in touch with me and to follow the show and find out what's happening. So I'd love to hear from you. And other than that, I will chat to you again in the next episode. Live your best life, and I'll see you then. Bye, guys.